a lot of excitement around AI and specifically generative AI. The question everyone comes to it with is, what can we do with this tool? And that's not really the right framing.
Welcome to Technovation. I'm your host, Peter High. Our broadcast today features a panel from our Metis Strategy Summit held on October 29th. The topic of the conversation is advancing data strategy and measuring AI's value. And the panelists who joined us for the discussion included Rob Alexander, the Chief Information Officer of Capital One, Katya Andresen, the Chief Digital and Analytics Officer of Cigna, and Nitin Tandon, the Chief Information Officer of Vanguard. The session was moderated by Metis Strategy Partner and West Coast Office Lead, Chris Davis. I hope you enjoyed the conversation.
While we're in the green room, Nitin, in his way of pithy statement, said, at Vanguard, it's more about time in the market than timing the market. And the topic of AI is very similar. If you're on the sidelines waiting to figure out, should I use Claude or should I use Gemini, or what's going on with OpenAI? Are they going to restructure as their board once again? It's less about the technology and it's more about the muscles that we build in order to compete in the game. And so in today's panel, we're going to be talking about how do you become AI smart? And you'll see a white paper that we published today that features the framework that we use at Metis to think about how to become AI smart. So I'm joined by a panel, Nitin, the CIO of Vanguard, Katya, the Chief Digital and Analytics Officer at Cigna, and Rob Alexander, the CIO at Capital One. And we're going to get right into it. Rob, in our prep conversation, you said something that I thought was really interesting, because in 2023, it was really the year of the press release. Everyone was sort of scrambling to please their board and say, this is how we're using generative AI. And really what that meant was like maybe ServiceNow gave them a little bit of AI and they could put a press release of what they're doing, customer support. And so there was this mad scramble. And then 24 for a lot of companies was, okay, how do we actually figure this out? And in our prep conversation, you said something along the lines of, it's been a 12-year journey to be in the perfect spot today. And I wonder if you could break that down in quarters for us of what has that 12-year journey been like to be ready to take advantage of AI?
Sure. Well, I think we recognized years ago that the winners in this business we're in of banking are going to be great technology companies. Our products are intangible products, or software, data algorithms. And so, we really kind of came to the conclusion 12 years ago that we are going to have to transform everything about who we are. I think the first thing you need to do is take a hard look in the mirror and say, how do I need to change in order to become the kind of company that we need to become? And so we began a real concerted effort to move from, what I call a bank IT shop to a real technology company. And talent was where we started. And it was really about how do you build a great engineering organization? How do you attract people that would otherwise work at, great tech companies and convince them to come work at a bank? And a lot of that is about, you got to work in ways that they want to work. And so, very early on, we said, look, we've got to be way more agile. So we did, like many companies, we implemented agile across our organization. By 2014, we were fully kind of configured in Agile Scrum as a way of working, and then kind of recognize that there's the whole infrastructure side of things that we're going to have to address. And, getting applications stood up in data centers is not the way to work. We've got to work on the cloud, and so we began a journey to the cloud that really began in earnest in 2015. We started with let's build everything new on AWS. And then in 2016, we said, we should just rebuild all of our applications on AWS. And so that's the journey we took. And by 2020, we had essentially rebuilt all of our applications to be cloud native applications on AWS. And we closed our last data center. So we're all in on AWS. We don't operate data centers anymore. And then, other parts of that journey included, you got to build software in modern ways. And so, getting everybody to converge to one pipeline framework, investing heavily in the automation of all of our processes for how we build software. And then, of course, data is a tremendous complexifier for moving to the cloud. And so, getting out of all of these legacy data platforms was a big part of that journey, and really building a single technology stack on the cloud that was our destination. So getting out of lots of siloed data kinds of platforms, and getting to a single destination, a single technology stack on the cloud that everybody could use. And it allows a lot more interoperability and data exchange between our businesses. And so that data transformation has been a big part of our journey. By the way, that very much continues. That data transformation part of this very much continues today. Now we're on a big journey around data products and standardization, and really making our data AI ready. And so that's been kind of the sequence we've been on for the last 12 years. And I think to really be a winner in the world of AI in your industry, I think you have to be on the cloud. I mean, maybe there are a handful of companies that could really run the infrastructure otherwise, but I just believe you have to be on the cloud. And you have to be on the cloud comprehensively. I think lots of companies will do point solutions of things and try to build those on the cloud. But if you really want to enable your company, you need to be on the cloud. You need to have built modern applications. I think one of the underappreciated elements of this journey is if you want to bring AI to life operationally, your applications have to be ready for that, just like your data has to be ready for that. So you got to be on the cloud. You got to have the applications. You got to have your data AI ready, and then you've got to invest in the talent that really understands how to take advantage of this revolution to make it happen. So anyway, that's a little bit about.
Yeah, I think it's just a fantastic overview. And what I want to do in this conversation is really build almost from the bottom up. You talked about a lot of the foundational components, Rob, and the shift to Agile. And Katya, for those who don't know, actually spent some time at Capital One prior to her current role as Chief Digital Analytics Officer at Cigna. And coming into healthcare, we heard it a little bit earlier from Sandeep, you're really bringing a customer-focused, outcome-driven mindset to the organization. And there's some similarities, but also some nuance in terms of how we build a culture of product management around AI. And I would love, Katya, for you to sort of build on Rob's messaging here of when you're coming to the organization, you need to build that end-to-end product development lifecycle through the lens of AI, but also, as we've talked about, think about it at the different layers of the stack. We'd love for you to share about how you're doing that at Cigna.
Sure. So I'm going to open by quoting a very curmudgeonly colleague of mine.
Rob?
No, he's a former colleague. I wouldn't do that to you, and you're not a curmudgeon. And he said, a fool with a tool is still a fool. It's what he always likes to say. And I bring that up because I think that a lot of excitement around AI and specifically generative AI, the question everyone comes to it with is, what can we do with this tool? And that's not really the right framing. I think we all know, we heard some of that this morning, but it still happens on a daily basis, I'm sure, for most of us within our organizations. And so the question really isn't, what do I do with this tool? It's, what am I trying to accomplish and how might this tool help?
Yeah.
But that seems so basic. But I imagine many of you are seeing, where's the AI strategy? Where's the generative AI strategy, et cetera, et cetera. And it's like, well, yes, we need to think about those things, but we need to think them in support of what value they're actually going to provide or what outcome they're going to drive. So that's when I think about product mindset, I think of sort of three aspects of product mindset. So the first one is, what problem are we solving? Like a real problem for a real human being, or a real business problem. Second is, how are we going to test and learn our way into validating that we are right about the problem statement, much less how we might approach solving it. The third is, how do we make sure that we are unlocking value as we go with this product? This isn't some big thing we're going to go off and do and roll out to the world and think we're going to make a big splash. We're going to have a more agile approach. And then you just keep doing that over and over again because you're never done with product. So that's sort of the product mindset. That's what we're trying to bring to your question across everything we do. So if I really simplified it, I'd say it's really important to bring the mindset to what you're going to go do. So what problem are you going to go solve with the AI? And then how you're going to do it. So when I think about the different layers of what we're trying to enable, we have thousands of machine learning models that have been around a long time. We have more recent deep learning models, and then we have generative AI. If I use the generative AI stack, we need the right infrastructure, the right gateways to access LLMs. We need the right developer tools on top of that, and we need the right applications on top of that. At each stage of those, the product mindset really comes in handy.
Yeah.
Like what value are we trying to drive because we have access to this LLM tells us a lot about the approach. Yeah. So I think, what we're learning is that product mindset that helps you avoid 3 mistakes. And I think one of them is death by 1,000 pilots, which we see in a lot of places, which is let's go unleash hundreds of experiments in generative AI.
Yeah.
And that makes me nervous because each one might seem like quick and easy, but they pile up. And if there's not a sort of theory on the case on what value you're going to try to drive, it's going to become unmanageable very quickly. And you'll go through the hype cycle at lightning speed.
Right.
Oh my gosh, this tool. Oh my gosh, pilots. And then suddenly everyone's like, it didn't really deliver any value. Yeah. And you just whipped through that hype cycle without really giving things a shot. I think the second mistake is along the lines of approach. So if you're thinking about value, then you always ask what needs to be true of this solution for it to deliver the value. That tells you a lot about how you approach the technical solution, what kind of AI you use, and then other things that have to bear out to realize the value, and having that collective picture, because the tech alone isn't going to work some kind of miracle, which brings me to my very last point, which is I feel like in life, I'm destined to learn the same lessons over and over again. And in my job, one of them is it's the humans, not the technology. That's the hard part of my job, always. And so that is really true with generative AI, we're finding. Because we find a lot of great applications in streamlining operations or making operations more efficient. But that has to be a really deep partnership across tech and ops, because tech people get frustrated with ops people because they feel, oh, we shipped all this great stuff and you're not using it. The ops people are like, yeah, well, you shipped something that doesn't actually take into account my workflows, right? For example, or the experience of using it. And so having this approach we've been talking about throughout the day of the right multidisciplinary team coming together in an agile way, solving it, it's that human cooperation that will really actually, at the end of the day, determine whether you realize the value or not. Yeah. It's easy to gloss over that when you have all the joy over this new tool. But that's back to my, that's just going to be a fool with the tool if you don't think through all this other things.
Yeah, absolutely. And so Nitin, building on that, when we were, the panel topic, I think, is measuring AI's value. And, being in the investment community, I was like, oh, he's going to have this great framework for how to build a business case on how to invest in AI. And I asked him this really brilliant prep question. He's like, yeah, we don't do any of that. You got to have faith. And I would love for you to sort of build on that and then share your version of the story. But then also maybe share an example. Because I think as we're talking and building this narrative of it's a journey of building in the foundational building blocks, data readiness, what your cloud infrastructure, the product management mindset, the experimentation culture, having a true north and understanding of value. But Vanguard as a company is very long-term in nature, right? That the long-term planning and sustainability is really sort of at its core value. And so I would love for you to sort of share the mindset and then share an example where you guys are putting AI to work in your business.
Absolutely, Chris. And I'd love to build on there's so many things you guys said that was so great and resonates so much with our journey as well. But, a couple of things that you said, I want to start with just reinforcing in our context as well. First is the cloud and the importance of being in the cloud. We've been on a very similar cloud journey, and I completely agree with having your data available in the cloud when Gen AI moment arrived, was a big differentiator in being able to rapidly innovate and experiment. And Katya, you said that as well, the product-oriented mindset and the learning mindset, right? So, Chris, when we were using AI in our advice models, and think of advice as if you're going financial planning, you want to retire at a certain age or, send your kids to college, you have multiple goals that you want to optimize for, and you want to develop an investment plan which allows you to achieve those goals. So we've been using advice for things like that, for years. But when Gen AI arrived, we said, okay, how can we use Gen AI, and to what end? To your point on why, right? And for us, the 3 whys were: we like to keep your costs low, so you can keep more of your returns and apply them towards your financial goals. So productivity was a driver for us. Client experience, some amazing client experience examples from earlier, today that you guys are already applying in production. For us, we also see that as a key enabler of client experience, but there are some regulatory hurdles for us to cross before we can enable it in client experience. But then advice. Think about Vanguard has about 50 million clients who own our funds. We have about 500,000 clients who avail of our advice. Advice in the industry is still at 100 to 200 basis points. We do offer an advice offer at 35 basis points. But all of a sudden, if we had to offer advice to 50 million clients, then aren't as many advisors in the world to scale that offer. So if we want to drive the same democratization in the world of investing that we did in the product world, in the advice world, we need a digital advisor. So for us, that's a huge opportunity. And I know robo-advice has come and gone a few times over the course of the last decade or so. I do believe Gen AI offers an opportunity along with AI to really crack that nut and offer advice to millions at scale. So with that context, our approach was we went after productivity. We said we wanted to test and learn in the first year. We don't know what the technology can do, what it can't do. We picked 3 fields of use: developer productivity, content generation, and contact center assist. Developer productivity, I need to catch up with Scott because I've been looking for a model I can train on my code base. We haven't seen the 50% productivity increase that a lot of people talk about. In fact, we saw a very modest 5 to 7% increase. But what that did tell us was an interesting fact, which is productivity on what base? Is it the 40 hours or is it the focus time? For us, it's an average of 23 hours per week. So it just led us to many different conversations on where does a developer spend their time, what optimizing coding and helping them develop faster is just one part, of the equation. Increasing their focus time and allowing them to spend more time elsewhere and solving for inefficiencies and multiple meetings, etc. So it surfaced a few things for us, which weren't directly proportional to, weren't exactly the objectives we were going after, but helped us identify other areas. Content generation, marketing, we use it a lot. That's been great, 10 to 15% productivity improvements in that space. Contact center assist, we found about 80 to 90% accuracy, but it hallucinated pretty heavily in 5% of the cases, to the extent we risked, the contact center agent offering the wrong guidance to someone on the phone. So we said, no, we've got to go back to the drawing board and redo that. So now we are taking a slightly different approach. The interesting fact there is we needed the error rate to be lower than a human error rate.
Right.
And this goes back to the self-driving car analogies, right? Like every accident by a self-driving car is going to, get spotlight, but in reality, is the error rate lower than the human or not? So those are our productivity use cases. And then we collected use cases very much like some of you did and talked about earlier across the enterprise, and we got hundreds. And governance of that is really challenging. So we went after approved patterns. So if you approve a pattern, if your use case falls in that pattern, we allow you to experiment with it. Because ultimately, I do believe democratization of capabilities and the product teams being able to use AI solutions while they develop products is the way you scale, innovation in this space. Going back to measuring value, look, we consolidated our data and analytics organizations that sat in 11 different divisions 2 years ago. We hired a new CDAO who's on my team now. And clearly, the sentiment before was, you're spending so much money on data analytics. What value are we getting?
Yeah.
So we got really rigorous in determining value of data and analytics initiatives, including AI. And this goes back to the point Chris was talking earlier when I said, it's as much an art as it is a science, right? If you're measuring the value of a data and analytics initiative, if you ask someone in data and analytics, they can come back with an elaborate model that tells you X, dollars and Y over Y time or X dollars of NPV. Is the finance partner going to believe that? Is the business person aligned on that? So what we said is, whatever mechanism we use, I need the data and analytics person, the business person, the finance person, and the technology team, all 4 of them, to align on the method of calculating value, attributing value, measuring value. We set it up in our OKRs at the beginning of the year. We track against it. So this year, we are at $224 million in value. And the value sources for us are revenue generation opportunities, so next best action, marketing materials. How do we enable our sales personnel to get more effective? We look at risk reduction, opportunities. Earlier people would listen to calls to identify potential issues, or maybe, preempt elder abuse, for example. Now you can simply search those call transcripts that you can do that you couldn't do earlier. So risk reduction is another opportunity. And then we also look at both cost reduction and cost avoidance. And depending on, mostly the productivity use cases gave us a lot of examples.
Yeah, I love that. And I think what's so interesting about each of your situations is there's a lot of scale on this panel. Vanguard has $9.3 trillion in assets under management. Cigna touches 190 million consumers, customers across 30 countries. And Rob, at Capital One, the amount of volume just by issuing the third largest credit card issuer in the United States, but the transaction volume when you think about credit is so almost mind-numbing. And we have Ed here from MasterCard who will talk more about that this afternoon. But so from an AI perspective, whether it comes to fraud or something else, in order to do your job of managing risk, you had to be invested in this space. And so early adopters of AI, machine learning, and would love for you to sort of pick up that journey back up of where are you now layering on AI-driven value for Cap One?
Well, I think we've been long-term users of machine learning at Capital One. Our whole kind of founding principle of the company was what our founder, who's still our CEO, Rich Fairbank, called an information-based strategy, which is this whole idea that you can use data and analytics and test and learn as a way to build a better business. And, this was kind of a novel idea back in the 80s when he came up with this kind of standard practice today. But our whole company has been built around that. And so, we started with statistical models, moved to machine learning models, and now we have the world of AI, maybe demarcated as, deep learning is kind of what you would call AI versus machine learning. But we've been long practitioners of that, and we've really focused on, it's a lot of it's about the data, as I talked about, but also a platform strategy for these efforts. And so for us, it was about early on building a machine learning platform so that we could, really give our whole company lift and be able to really build on top of a set of infrastructure that made building machine learning models and launching them into production and governing them and testing them and the building of them. All of that could be built in the same way on one platform. We extended that to a feature platform to keep all of the kind of features that you want to include in models. And then we've done that now with generative AI. We've built a generative AI platform. And so, one of our biggest investments right out of the chute was not about any particular use case. It was about talent, and it was about building this generative AI platform. And so now on top of that, we're able to build lots of use cases and get a lot of reuse of capability as part of that. And look, I break down the kind of world of use cases into things that are more predictive, like for us, fraud, credit, marketing optimization. All of these things need predictive models. Historically, the domain of machine learning kinds of models. And then there are the models, then there are the use cases that are enabled now by generative AI. So, language related use cases, reasoning related use cases. And so for us, just like you mentioned, Nitin, we've been looking at our whole developer process end to end and where we can apply AI, not just in code generation, but in all of the elements of how we build software. We find that our developers spend a ton of time just trying to figure out the right way to do things and researching. And if we can take all of our documentation and all of the underlying information about the tools that we have and make that available through AI in the kind of context for the developers, that's a massive accelerator. So there are all these language, and we've got a customer, assist kind of program, just like you mentioned, where we give our agents information right at the moment of the call. We'll pull all the relevant articles for them. We'll summarize them and give them that. And we've worked a lot on this accuracy problem. It's so easy to get 70% accuracy out of the box. All the work is getting from 70% to 99%, and that's just a process of training, fine tuning, and continuous feedback loop that you have to go through to make those models really work. So those are important use cases. What we're also interestingly finding, though, is that transformer models, which we all know underlie large language models and the generative AI breakthrough, are also really useful in the world of predictive models as well. And not many people are talking about this, but we're taking transformers and applying them in the world of taking our very rich customer data, proprietary data about our customers of all different kinds, and being able to build essentially customer foundation models that are based on not on language, but about the data about our customers, and then leveraging those in our predictive use cases. And so we think there's a lot of leverage in that as well.
We want to cover two more topics. Katya, being at Cigna, you obviously have a diversified portfolio of businesses. And so you service the enterprise. And so there's both maybe perhaps a challenge on the one hand of how do I drive value for each business? But then in healthcare, there's also this unique opportunity to drive value across the end-to-end experience. And so we'd love for you to maybe share about how you're thinking about your framework of segmenting the portfolio of AI investments, especially in a federated business model with so many different diverse stakeholders.
Yeah, the key there is leveraging the horizontal role to do pattern detection and look across the enterprise at what are the problems we're trying to solve over and over again, and how might we solve those in a new way, thinking across. And then how might that transform experiences and some of the essential problems of healthcare? Like healthcare is complex, it's fragmented, it's so hard to navigate, it's costly, et cetera, et cetera. And so, we don't want to exacerbate that by taking a vertical approach to problem solving, right? So you don't want to have to navigate your healthcare over here in terms of pharmacy, over here in terms of your health insurance, over here in terms of your teledoc appointment, right? So what we try to do is say, okay, what are the problems that we're trying to solve for a customer? What are the problems we're trying to solve for a provider? What are the problems we need to solve for employers? And then how do we begin to look across those audiences and say, where can we leverage better predictive experiences? I completely agree with everything you said, Rob. There's so many interesting things to do with deep learning, with all the data. We're doing some similar things that you described so that we can better predict what's going to happen next, right? That's one of the most important things to do for our company. Second is, okay, it's one thing to predict what's going to happen next, but can we do something about it, right? Are we connecting that to innovation in terms of next best action, which she's talked about in the marketing context, and we think about that both in the administrative and clinical context. And then, okay, but then the really toughest nut to crack in healthcare is not just predicting what's going to happen, not just figuring out what you should tell someone to do, whether they're an individual or a doctor. It's getting them to actually do it. It's the behavior change. It's back to the people, not the technology problem that I cited earlier. And so that's probably where I'm most excited about thinking across the enterprise is how do you take advantage of the fact that we're in the golden age of neuroscience? We know more about sort of human behavior and all of its irrational glory. We can get to we have a lot of tools, both from marketing, whether it's a customer data platform paired with predictive analytics. We can do a lot of testing and creative testing on what's going to motivate what person to take which actions under what circumstances and context. Yeah. So that gets really interesting too. And so what we try to do is, so how do we think across those essential problems? And then how do we work with different lines of business to solve them? But when we work that way, then we're better able to deliver experiences that face outward, whether it's for customer or provider, that are seamless. Yeah. Because we had that approach from the get-go.
Yeah. And I think there is something interesting about, the behavior change where it might almost feel less judgmental, especially in healthcare. Like if a human is telling you to change your behavior, you could feel a little judged. Like when my mom tells me to cut back on the buffalo wings, like you're getting a little older, Chris, your cholesterol might be a little high. I'm like, yeah, get out of my face, Mom. But if an AI is sort of objectively giving me the details, I think it becomes, maybe I'm a little bit more open-minded. So that might be where an interesting sort of human and tech play. And so Nitin, with the last minute that we have here, in our prep conversation, we talked about and you and Katya and Rob all think about this similarly, breaking down the portfolio of managing for efficiency, but also sort of the disruptive and business model enhancements. And you mentioned advisor. And so how do you think about when you're building an AI-driven model, the difference between where you can get it off the shelf versus where you actually have to go build your own proprietary capabilities, because it's such a specialized field, and the margin for error is so different.
Yeah, our approach. So I do believe, and we do believe, that models will get more specialized. I'd like to have, and we're in the process of rolling out an LLM, across the company, more for day-to-day productivity use, because you choose your planning horizon, but in short time, any employee walking into the door in any company is going to ask, where's my productivity assistant? As will any client going on any website expect search to be AI powered. Those two are just table stakes. We get to it at different points, but that's a reality we'll all live in, pretty soon if we aren't living in right now. So that's general purpose, large models, but I think specialized use cases, whether it is risk, whether it's advice, that's where I think you'll need more. Smaller models can do the job, but those are models that we would need to train on your data. Because the LLMs, the large models will all converge towards roughly the same set of capabilities because they all trade on the same data. It's only a question of time when they get there. Some may be ahead, like OpenAI than others, but it's only a question of time. Private enterprise data is what causes the difference. So our approach is essentially picking the right purpose-built model as a starting point. We're not starting to build a large or small language model on our own, but then training it. And the training approaches may differ. We may do reinforcement learning in some cases or RAG in other cases, but training it on our data and context.
Yeah.
So I'd say a mix of you're buying the model, but you're actually training it on your data.
Love that. So just to recap, when you think about each panelist's insights, if there's 5 things I can encourage you to walk away with, be on the cloud. If you want to be ready to take advantage of this journey and this opportunity, get ready and get there soon. Build the right people and culture and practices to attract the leading tech talent. If someone joins your company and doesn't see that other people are operating with the same urgency, they're going to leave. It's just a matter of time. Operate with that customer-focused, human-centric product management mindset where you're experimenting and experimenting and experimenting, not looking for the home run out of the gate, but actually hitting those singles and building the positive momentum. But apply product management at every layer of the stack, as Katya talked about, the foundational capabilities, the gateway, the self-service capabilities, and how you actually roll out the adoption, including with operators. Be outcome-oriented, and whether it's writing it into OKRs where people are jointly committed or setting big, audacious goals, be outcome-oriented rather than the technology leading the journey. And last but not least, if you're on the sidelines, get in the game, because it's not about timing the market, it's time in the market. Please join me in thanking Rob, Katya, and Nitin.
Yes.
Thank you.